and welcome to Artist Therapy or Writers Therapy. This is a bonus episode from the talk I had with Taran. We were talking a lot before we got to the actual therapy or the questions, from the yes. Hello, and I just wanted to share that as well. I was thinking to make this into a bonus episode at one point, and that point is now. So yes, it's the hour before the actual episode with Taran, but I think it was very interesting to talk with him about a lot of things. Yes, and I'm talking English right now because still, if Taran is listening to this, or somebody who doesn't understand Danish, who just kind of eat everything Taran related, they can listen to this little intro. But I'm not gonna say anything else because it's just a bonus episode, a special if you must. Yes, my talk with Taran was very interesting. So here's the bonus episode, which is, to make it clear, the hour before the episode you have heard with Taran. Yes. I hope everyone is having a good day. I am having a very good day. I just burnt myself on a candle, and maybe it's a sign that I shouldn't put my finger in candles. Yes. Why do I still talk? Here's the episode. And to my Danish listeners, hello. Eller hej. Goodbye. And I want to hear, before we really start, how was Fantasy Festival for you in Denmark? Have you been in Denmark before?
It was really nice because I got to meet my my publishers, and you'd be surprised how little contact like English or American or I guess any sort of foreign translation writer, we really don't get to interact with the publishers at all. There's like several degrees of separation. So there's between me and my agent and the foreign agent talks to the foreign publisher. So it's literally like if they have a question for me, it goes through two people before it reaches me, which is, I like being able to speak to the publishers directly because, if instead of it being a big thing where they need to get some information from me, they can literally send me an email and I can respond in half an hour and they can have what they need instead of, having this long process of asking one person to ask another person to ask me to ask another person. So it's, it has to go through four people. Yeah. It was really nice, and everyone was really friendly and welcoming. And, what I really liked about it as well is that the festival organizes for you to come a few days early and explore a little bit. So I got to see some of Jesper. Yeah. That was probably my favorite part, because when I go on tour in America, I get to eat in a restaurant in the local area, but that's about it. Otherwise, it's the bookshop, the hotel, and the airport are the only three things. So it was a really wonderful pleasure, and I got to hang out with other authors and meet people. So that's why I do it.
Did you went to the beach and see the big persons?
I went to the beach. Statues. I saw the 3 big statues, or maybe it's 6 big statues. I can't remember how many of them there are, but that was really cool. Although when I was on the beach, it was basically just German people there, which was kind of there was you could see the German number plates on all of the cars. Like
they all want to see those statues.
Yeah, it wasn't just the stat. I think I went to another beach as well.
They heard you were coming, and then they.
Well, I hadn't published in Germany, but
Yeah,
I
I
think
read
they were
that.
more.
And France, right?
Yeah, I'm in France too, and Spain, and I'm in Portuguese and Dutch, and I'm published in Belgium, Italy now.
What
So lots of Europe.
about Sweden and Norway?
Not yet, not yet.
Do you want to be in these countries as well?
Of course. I mean, to be honest, for me, the foreign translations, they represent something that's quite special to me.
Yeah.
Because it makes you feel like you're a success when you can travel to a foreign country and walk into a bookstore and your books are translated into the local language. And one of my favorite things actually is to travel to countries where my book is published and sign books in the bookstores secretly. But who knows? Maybe Sweden soon. I hear that my Danish publisher has a good relationship with a Swedish.
Yeah, that just got bought by Høj, I think it's called.
Sure. So if my books have a good sales record in Denmark, maybe the Swedish might look at it and say this is worth exploring. So we'll see about that.
And I think it will in Denmark.
Well, thank you.
You've been bought by my publishers.
Yes.
So that's really cool.
No, absolutely. You're right. I didn't know this actually.
No.
I got there. So everyone, I was new to them. They were new to me. But I think we hit it off really well. And I'm actually seeing the chief editor, Louise. She's coming to London, and we're going to meet up and talk business and ways we can work together and stuff. So that's really exciting. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. But you had a good night in. We were out eating at street food, I think.
Yes.
Where we met. Took a picture.
Yeah, the dancing and stuff. That was really cool.
Yeah, and
I loved it.
A lot of people came to Jim Butcher to buy him a beer, but he didn't. He already had a beer, but they didn't want to buy me a beer.
Yeah.
And even though Jim Butcher said no, they just walk away when I said you can buy me a beer if you want. I'm also a writer.
I remember, yeah. But I guess they're fans of his work specifically. They didn't know who I was.
But yeah, that it was nice meeting you in Denmark, and it was very, very not funny, but joyful to see you all dance. I have been in that dance for so many years, so I skipped ahead and waited later. When you all went home, we were out dancing.
Yes, I think I saw some videos on your Instagram that you guys stayed a bit later.
Yeah,
but I have to. Unfortunately, when I'm traveling as an author, I have a rule that I have to be professional and I can't go and get really drunk and have fun, even if I really get on with the people that I'm meeting with. It's important for me to keep that mindset. Yeah,
I maybe also should have gone home earlier.
Oh, I think it's fine if you're in your own country, but I think when you're traveling, it's you have to be a bit more respectful.
I had my live podcast and my things I should be doing on the Saturday, so Sunday was more a free
nice
day for me.
I wish I could have stayed because I was having a lot of fun as well.
It looked like you had fun. I didn't see Jim Butcher dancing though. This is. I want to tell you something. It's not that serious. Just I need to tell someone about this.
Sure.
I had a little hangover at this Saturday. And I was with a friend down in the city in Aalborg.
Sure.
And we went by a bookstore, and I know they bought my first book, and I just published the second, and it has good ratings. But I'm afraid to go into the bookshop this time and ask, hey, have you bought number 2? Because I don't know how it went with the first one. So I made my friend, she got in there and asked for me. And then they bought the book, she said,
Nice.
and
Nice.
filmed it. And then I was like, this is going to be celebrated. And we went to a museum I have been looking at for the 3 years I have lived here. And I don't know what it is, what kind of museum it is, but I was just like, it's now. We need to go to this museum. And then in the museum they said it's a local history, very local history.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, okay, fine. At the moment we bought the tickets, I felt like nausea. I had like, stomach ache.
Wow.
And was like, whoa, I shouldn't have went out last night.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Wow.
and they said you can explore. It's a very, very big museum. You can explore everything, but do not go on the 3rd floor. That's office buildings.
Sure.
Okay, the first room we came to, I saw a toilet, and I did what I had to do on that toilet. And when you have to do that kind of thing, it's normally very good to flush 2 times, flush out.
Sure.
So I only did it once.
Right.
Because there was not many people at this museum.
Sure.
Yeah. We go to the 1st floor, I think, and it's a weird museum. There's a lot of weird stuff, and then we come into a room with some kind of monster, and in this monster there's a cake. It looks like a very old cake, and it's that there on the sign it says the bishop cake.
Okay.
And I look around, and this whole room is dedicated to this bishop cake, but it's not a cake, it's a poo.
Oh my
It's
God.
a 400-year-old poo.
Wow.
It's a very old poo, and there's videos about someone analyzing the poo and saying, yeah, he definitely had grapes.
Wow.
And I look very much, and it's a ginormous poo. I think this bishop really know how to
He had a
take
lot of
shit.
fiber in his diet.
Yeah, and I got really afraid about me not double flushing.
Right.
Because maybe they will look in my poo in 400 years. And
Wow.
I am not proud of what I ate the night before.
Yes.
Can you imagine a 400-year-old chili cheese top?
Yeah, I can imagine it.
So I had a very bad. I wasn't proud of.
You felt guilty.
Yeah, and then we went to the 3rd floor and tried to open the office building. We couldn't. It was locked. And then we went down again. It was thank you for the tour. There is something not working on the 3rd floor. We couldn't get in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you're not allowed to. And then we showed them selfies. Because we're rebels.
Right. Understood.
Yeah, and we went home, and the first thing my friend do is to take a poo herself at my toilet, and she breaks the button I flush with.
Oh no.
It's totally broken. It's hanging out with wires now.
Oh dear.
And I think it's karma for not flushing.
It might be karma.
And because I'm moving in 2 weeks, so I don't have time for more stuff to get fixed in this apartment.
Oh no.
So it was I experienced karma.
These things happen.
Yes, that's the rock and roll writer life.
Yes. Well, I think people have an idea of what being a writer looks like.
Yeah.
And, I think it's funny how many, writers, they say, I wrote most of my book on the toilet, believe it or not. Yeah. But, I think writing is romanticized a lot. And it's this idea that you have to go to a special place and, connect with your muse and calm your soul. And, for example, J.K. Rowling, she would like book herself into like a Scottish penthouse hotel room, and she would write from there for like months. Obviously this is like book 6 now, and she's got enough money to afford to do something like that. And some people, they have to go to a coffee shop, they have to leave their home. But I have a terrible habit. I just write my book in bed.
In bed, cool.
Yeah, I do all my work in bed. Pretty much all my emails, everything is in bed. It's a terrible habit. It's not good for my back. It's not healthy to stay in bed. Wake up, reach for your laptop and start working from there. It's not healthy. But that is how a lot of authors end up writing. It's not so romantic. They're not Ernest Hemingway, in Cuba, looking out over the ocean with a bottle of expensive whiskey and a typewriter. They're more likely to be moving between the bathroom and the bed, typing away, writing in bursts, and looking at their deadline and worrying if they're going to make it. That is often how I imagine writing is for many writers.
Yes, so I shouldn't be asking you about ergonomic advice.
No, I have some very bad habits. I will say this though, before I ended up starting a company and working for my family, my vision for what the ideal life of a writer is to travel the world in cheaper countries where staying in a hotel is the same as paying rent in your home country, and traveling from Thailand to Bali to Indonesia. Basically working as a digital nomad, because the fantastic thing about writing is that, frankly, you don't even need an internet connection necessarily to do the work, although you just need your laptop. Although I prefer to have internet so I can look things up and research things as and when I need. But really, that's the wonderful thing about being a writer, is that although many writers will just follow the easiest and least healthy version of a writing habit, for a while that was what I did. I would travel around and write, from coffee shops and restaurants and beachside bars, and the only thing you had to worry about was getting your stuff stolen. And if you do most of your work during the day and you leave your laptop at home in the evening, it's quite nice. And I wish there was a company that organized writing groups to travel the world, and you travel with a group of 10 other authors, and you all have a similar interests, and you have someone to hang out with and have lunch and dinner with and socialize with. And that's my ideal world. And when I started my publishing company, Portal Books, I had this vision of the authors traveling with us and, traveling the world. But, people have more responsibilities, and it's not really possible unless you're quite a successful author and have a lot of disposable income and
you have to be very dedicated to it, right? It's not just need to be a hobby.
And you need to be lucky as well that your books sell enough to make that return. And I can tell you this. The majority of children's and teen fiction authors, they primarily, a lot of them, basically most of their income comes from doing school visits and school presentations. That maybe makes up 70% of their income. And then the books only makes up about 30%.
Yeah.
I
think books are even less here, and income from
school visits. Yeah. So, it's being a writer is like being a musician. People say, well, what's it like to be a musician? Well, if you're like Beyonce or someone who's had some success, it's a very different experience, I think, to somebody who's making most of their money from live music at pubs and restaurants and busking and, selling a few thousand copies here and there and having a semi-decent YouTube channel. That's the experience for the majority of musicians, I believe.
Yeah, and then try to be a writer in a country with only 5 million people.
Yeah,
who doesn't even like books.
I agree with you there completely, Jesper. writing when your first language is not English is probably one of the most difficult careers to pursue because in some countries they don't actually like to publish local authors. Their preference is to translate existing popular novels in America and the UK who have enough word of mouth that translates into their country as well. Yeah. So it's very, very difficult. And if you want a translation deal, and for a lot of authors, maybe 70% of their income will come from translation deals. Like I know mine does. Even if you count America as my domestic market, I would say 50% of my income comes from my foreign publishers, Poland, France, Germany, Brazil, etc. So, but here's the problem. If you're a Danish person with a Danish novel trying to translate your book for an Italian publisher, they're not going to have a Danish to Italian translator sitting around. And it's likely that any of their editors will be able to speak Danish. So effectively, if I had to give any advice to an author who really wants to become a full-time author, my advice really would be to translate your novels into English.
Yeah, and it's a very big ambition for me to do that. But my publishers would have to pay for it.
Yeah, so it's a risk, because the publisher is unlikely to translate it to English in the hopes that an American or British publisher picks it up, because that's a £10,000 risk. Although I believe that you can get it for around 5,000 now, and I feel for translators as well, because I believe that artificial intelligence will begin to replace translation services. It probably won't do as good a job because a translator is able to restructure the prose, the narrative, to be a fluid and enjoyable experience to read, because direct translations, like a mathematical direct translation of the exact sentence, doesn't always work or flow together very nicely. So it'll be interesting to see what happens for foreign writers in the future. AI will open up their ability to pitch it in British, American, and even other markets. The question is whether maybe they translate it first with artificial intelligence, send it out and pitch it, and then if it gets purchased, a professional translator is brought in to do a proper translation of it. I don't know if that's where the future lies, but it's a very, very hard thing to write in a language that isn't English and try and get book deals. So, I feel for foreign writers, and I what I like about Denmark is that I see a lot of local authors being published in Denmark, local authors writing Danish stories written by Danish authors. I think that's a really cool thing, and it's not something I see that often, actually. Like when I go to Brazil, I can recognize most of the books on the shelf because they're originally translated from English. While in Denmark, when I was walking around the stores, now I know it's a fantasy festival and they're probably focused on local authors and stuff like that, but I was really impressed with the range of translation and local authors. So, but the market is smaller, like you said. Do you say 2 million people, was it? Or how many people did you say?
In Denmark, I think it's around 5.5 million people, but it's very not that common that people read Danish fantasy. So the market is very small compared to crime and thrillers and just normal books in quotation. Because when someone gets published in English, it's almost have to be a bestseller and a crime or a thriller to get translated into English. I would like to think that if you're ambitious enough and rich enough, you maybe could take the chance, like I could take the chance with my book, The Owl Man, and think, okay, maybe this country I can't live writing fantasy here, but maybe if someone would pick it up in America, something, and believe the story. But it's also, like you say, it's very local. It's have this Danish charm, and I don't know how it would go in a translation. I think it would lose something.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that. I think you do lose a little something, and that's just natural. And it's it's nothing against the translator's ability. It's simply that's what happens when you write in a different language. There is something lost a little bit. But what's interesting is, let's say you're a Danish author who decides, yes, I want to translate my book. I found someone who'll do it for. You put that money down. You get your agent, if you have an agent, to send it to foreign publishers all over the world. Maybe Italy, France, Germany, whatever. Yeah. But unfortunately, you only get one deal. Maybe it's like a Russian deal, or I guess that doesn't happen so much anymore. But maybe a Polish deal. 3,000 euros or something. It doesn't cover the expense you've put down. Well, there is something to consider. You could self-publish the book on Amazon.com and Amazon.co.uk. Yeah. Put a sexy cover on it. And see how it does. You might be able to claw back a return, especially if your Danish publisher agrees to let you use the same cover that they own the rights to for your self-publishing. That saves you, maybe $1,000, $2,000. There are expenses. There are additional expenses. You probably need to pay a proofreader to read over the documents. That could be about $1,000 potentially. But there is that option to self-publish it. And I'm not going to lie to you. It's difficult to launch a fantasy book on Amazon.com. You can put it up and Amazon will show it to say 1,000 people. And if those 1,000 people don't click, it just sort of dies. Yeah. So ideally you would have a plan when you launch it. So perhaps you would say, I have a mailing list of 2,000 people. I will, and you find another author who has a mailing list of 2,000 people. Then you say, we'll do a swap. So on the day my book comes out, I'll do an email to my fans, or maybe not the same day, but maybe like a week later. You say, I'll do an email to all my mailing list readers saying, hey guys, this is my friend Jens, and he wrote a book about dragons, and please read it. And he will do the same on the day that your book comes out. And what's great about mailing list swaps as well is that you can say, look, you might have 4,000 readers or fans, but you can target the 200 Americans. So only the 200 Americans get this email, and you don't need to bother all the rest of your fans. So there are ways that you could launch your book that way if you paid for a translation and it didn't work out. So it's something to think about. Yeah. But I think that there is a market for publishers who specialize in bringing foreign books into British and American markets. I bet there's some fantastic, really successful books out there that no one's ever bothered to put down the money to translate it into English. But if you're an American/British hybrid publisher in the English language, you could hire someone who they can read in English, but they're also originally from Denmark. And you can say it's your job to read all submissions from Danish publishers in Danish, and then we decide if we translate it afterwards. That saves the risk for the author and the Danish publisher from having to translate it just for it to be considered. So there's all these books that are getting ignored because the Danish publishers are like, look, are we really going to pay all this money to translate it? And then we have no idea if it's going to get published. You need really strong sales. And I bet it's a really sexy middle ground where you could find books that are not so successful that the Danish publisher will pay 10,000 to translate it, but are successful enough that a Danish English publisher who is based in the US and UK could potentially read it, make an assessment without the translation needing to happen first.
Yeah. I'm inspired by this because when you just sit around and write for Danish audience and think, okay, I'm going to please my readers, and that's that, and maybe myself and my publishers as well. I'm not writing for the money, and I would like to be writing for the money, but knowing that, okay, I have readers who wants to read this is very giving, and it's very confirming that that they buy it, and I don't have to pay anything to publish. I get money, not enough, but I get money, and I get I just got 2 really good reviews on my second novel.
Great.
And it's like, you know, this is going to this is why I'm writing. This is why I keep writing on this series, because I have always, you know, I've been writing since I was 9, 8, 7. Yeah. And the thing about finishing something, it gets at some point, it gets either very hard or very boring or very complicated, and then you just move on to another project that sounds
more exciting.
Yeah. And when you put the time and the pressure into making a book and keep believing in the project and actually discover you can you can finish a book and you can make the hard second book. You know, it's always the second one that's I think it's the most challenging, because can you do this again? And when you have all this success about finishing something and people likes it, it feels kind of empty to know that, okay, but it's still just this niche in Denmark I'm writing for. It feels like watching this Stephen King and even you and Jim Butcher and Neil Gaiman, and seeing this really rock and roll horror and fantasy writers have living that maybe Hollywood life, even, you know, in compared to taking a douche at a museum with a hangover.
Well,
yeah.
Look, I mean, it's not as glamorous as you imagine. You know, I'm since COVID, I haven't really traveled around much.
No, because there's then on your, I think it's Goodreads, you're and your Instagram, you're a traveling writer.
Well, yeah, I did for a while.
Yeah.
Live like a travel writer, and then unfortunately had to start working for my family business, which takes up a lot of time. It's quite stressful. And the startup that I founded, pretty much everything can be done online, but it still took that extra time, and you know, it was harder to travel. And you know, now I'm sort of settling down. Actually, I'm looking to buy a farm and build my own home on this farm and start a family there. And I want to create like a little paradise for myself and my family with fruit trees and chickens and pigs. And I want to be self-sustaining. Yeah. Where, you know, I don't want to have to rely on government electricity or even water. I want it to be like an eco home. And nice. You know, I want it to be a permaculture, regenerative agriculture, organic food for my children and myself to eat. And
so you're not going to flush at all. You're just going to empty a bucket out in the forest.
Well, you know, believe it or not, you know, it's called humanure. And it's you know, it's dangerous if you eat vegetables grown directly in it. But if you put it through a composting process with worms and all sorts of other things, it actually makes a very good fertilizer. But that's a whole different conversation. I think I wouldn't mind being connected to the sewage system because it doesn't cost anything.
Water.
Yeah, I suppose. But if you're flushing with your own water that you collect from your rain gutters from your roof, then you don't pay anything.
It's just pee really hard down in the dump.
But I mean, look, I have a whole design. It's like 25 pages of integrated systems of farming that all connects together. And I have like a planting scheme where all the plants are mutually beneficial, and like it's actually very complicated. So let's say I wanted to grow a fruit. Sorry, I know this is a little off topic, but imagine you want to grow different types of fruit trees. Well, what's the ideal way of planting these fruit trees? Well, first, you want trees of different heights alternating. Why? Because tall trees have deep roots and shorter trees have shallow roots, which means if you plant them next to each other, the root zones are not competing. If they're both shallow roots, their roots start to compete with each other. But if there's tall, short, they don't compete. They actually share resources between themselves. And you want them to fruit at different times. If they're both fruiting in July, for example, then they're both sucking up all the resources from the soil at the same time, which means they're competing for water, they're competing for minerals, resources, sugars. So what happens is if they fruit at different times, one uses up all the water and the resources at one time, and then if the other one fruits later or earlier, there's no competition at the same time, and the soil is able to recover in between. So there's all sorts of different things that you want to do. You don't want to put, for example, fruit trees that are closely related to each other next to each other because they share all the same diseases. So let's say you want to plant 6 different types of apple and 6 different types of cherry. You would do apple, cherry, apple, cherry, apple, cherry. Because if one apple tree gets a disease, instead of it going down the whole row, or let's say there's a pest like an apple pest, then you have these trees in between of cherry, and the insects don't, or the fungal disease, it doesn't travel through, and the root zones aren't connected because there's a cherry tree in between. There's all sorts of stuff. I've spent 5 years studying it. So that's actually my dream. It's just hard to find the land because I want to have a river running through it, and I want it to be near a train station, and having the right amount of land. I want about 8 acres if I can get it. So that is my dream at the moment, and I'm imagining an idyllic, secure farm with walls and thorns all around it, and that's my vision for the future. I actually have a pretty pessimistic view of what our society is going to look like in the next sort of 10 years.
Yeah, me too.
I think there's going to be a lot of crime. The crime rate is going to skyrocket.
In England or like everywhere. The world?
In the Western world in particular, actually. Because here's the problem with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is going to take the middle class jobs first, and then it will take the working class jobs second. Because the first thing AI is going to do is it's going to take all the information-based jobs. That's all the office workers. They're the middle class that pay most of the taxes in the West. Is the middle class. The working class, they pay some tax, but they're in this lower tax bracket. Generally speaking, they don't contribute that much to the overall tax amount. So what happens when all the people who are paying your tax suddenly, instead of needing 100 people to do a task, you now only need 2 people with the help of AI to do that task. So you lose your middle class, and then just as the new jobs that AI creates start to appear, you've got all the working class jobs being taken away because now automation is catching up to AI, where the robotics that can replace working class jobs, the service worker jobs, the warehousing jobs, the transportation jobs. All these jobs that the working class around the world do, they will be automated away to some degree. So you're going to have these two shocks, and they're going to be timed pretty poorly. Now you have all these Western governments in massive debt because of COVID, and you have these China who are planning to have a war. They're basically, their entire military is designed for a war with America. So
you're making me very sad right now, but it's the hard truth. I know it's facts, and I know it's important to talk about. So
yeah. So
keep going.
In my opinion, people who have the opportunity to, I don't know. Look, I mean, I know this sounds kind of post-apocalyptic or whatever, but my view is that in the next sort of 7 to 10 years, there's going to be really big spikes in crime and unemployment. Government services are going to not be as good as they once were. Policing, healthcare, even just like transport and traffic, all the services that the government's supposed to do. A lot of our buildings, infrastructure, lights, sewers, they require constant maintenance, at least in the UK. I don't know about Denmark. And there's not going to be the money to maintain these things, restore these things. So my personal view is having somewhere away from the big cities, secure, where you can grow your own food and sort of not interact with the public if you have to. And here's the other scary thing is, COVID, based on what I've read online, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but my understanding is that now it's pretty likely that it was a lab leak that resulted in COVID.
It's fucking scary.
Yeah. Apparently they were looking at like level 1 viruses, and they were only using like level 3 protections. And the first people to get sick were the Chinese scientists themselves, and it spread from there. And they were doing gain of function research, and that, unfortunately, even the American government have released a paper saying, okay, it was likely a leak. Now, here's the scary thing about that is that because this virus has been treated to be more dangerous, it's, from what some scientists have said, it's more likely to mutate than a naturally occurring disease. So let's remember what SARS in South Korea did. Yeah. It was not as infectious as the COVID we have now, but I think it killed 1 in 3 people that caught it. So if COVID mutated to be more dangerous and it started affecting children, worse than it does, we were actually quite lucky with COVID in that it doesn't hurt children. It mostly impacts the elderly. It's a COVID virus which mutates less than a flu virus does. But, it's, for me, I personally think that people should be looking towards a little bit more independence and less reliance on others, because I feel like that's something that people will need in the future. I would like to be wrong. It would be wonderful if AI creates such a surplus in efficiencies and works that governments can tax it, use that money for creating jobs, for fixing the infrastructure, for clawing back some of this huge debt that they have. That would be really nice. And, I'm not an expert. It's just it's my personal views, things I've read online. I've checked the sources. So, I'm not a proponent of conspiracy theories. I don't think what I'm saying is a conspiracy theory, but I just feel like people should, if you have the choice between, do I want to live in a big city right in the center, or would I rather live somewhere a bit more rural with a bit more land, a bit further away from where all the problems might, where the rioting and protests are going to happen? That's something that I would do. So that's my dream. My dream is to have my family, my little farm, chickens, fruits, vegetables, and just live with my family there and do my work from there and see what happens.
Can you maybe build a shelter somewhere on your land for me?
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. I think people who build nuclear bomb shelters are crazy.
Yeah.
If a nuclear bomb, it's all very well having one that can survive the initial blast, but if you're planning on living there for the next 8 years, waiting for the radiation or something to go down, it's just a stupid thing to do. That land is screwed now.
Yes.
like, I'm sorry, you leave that land if a nuclear bomb landed near it.
Maybe I can just live with you on your farm until it happens.
If there's a nuclear war, the only real places to go are Iceland and New Zealand, really.
Yeah, I really want to visit New Zealand. Maybe that's a good opportunity. Maybe
it's a lovely country. I was there maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah,
beautiful place. Quite barren in places, but I do want to own an Icelandic horse.
On New Zealand or just on your farm?
Just on my farm, an Icelandic horse. I think, to be honest, if there's a nuclear war, the whole world is screwed. So there's no way to plan for that. You should just plan for, a situation where you may want to stay at home because everywhere else is a little dangerous. That's basically my vision. And
it's very sad right now.
Yes, but did we talk about UFOs at all when I was with you?
I was just going to ask about that because you said conspiracy theories and what's your I know we also have to get through some I need to introduce the podcast at some point, but I want to hear your
what we've been talking about. That hasn't been recorded.
It's recording right now, but I can always edit it or maybe make a special episode where we just talk.
Okay, well, let's start the interview now, just because we've been talking an hour, and I probably should end off. We'll do another half hour. It's just writing stuff. How about that?
Yeah, one thing about UFOs.
Yeah.